It's the Pillowcast with Lane McCullum. If you've got friends, you better call them. This podcast exists for absolutely no reason. Yeah. It's the only thing worse than federal treason.
Hello, all you pillow people. Welcome back to another episode of Pillowcast. We are at episode 30, which is crazy. That was the original game plan back when I was doing season 1, that we were going to do 30 episodes, and then there was going to be season 2. But we're in season 2 now because, all this stuff happened. Listen to the last episode if you want to hear context, whatever. It's been a minute since the last one. Not a lot of stuff has happened, not a lot of stuff for me to talk about. But I have officially found a really cool topic that I think you guys will be interested in, maybe, if you're into it. But some things before I get into that. Firstly, I have had a very eventful last few days. The power was out in my house. I had to go around a few different places and stay the night, and I was hanging out with friends and stuff. So very, very exhausting last few days in my life. So if I sound really tired or exhausted or whatever, it's because these last few days have been extremely exhausting for me. But everything's good now because we have Cuphead news. And second of all, I mentioned last time that I make music, and I specifically mentioned my project Schoolyard Sacrifice, which is my side project thing that I do. And for those of you who care, I don't know how many of you care, but since this is like more of a personal podcast, I can kind of talk about whatever the fuck I want to talk about. The Schoolyard Sacrifice self-titled album was released on May 20th. It is out now. It's out on SoundCloud. You just look up Schoolyard Sacrifice. It's on there. Go to Teddy Diary on Bandcamp. It's also on there. And yeah, I'm extremely proud of it. It's on YouTube as well at Teddy Diary Music. I'm extremely proud of it. It is like my crowning achievement in everything I've ever done music related, at least in my opinion. So if you're into that, please check that out if you're listening. It would really mean a lot to me. I poured like 2 months of my life into making it, so it would really mean a lot if you were to listen to it. Actually, related to Schoolyard Sacrifice today, I made 2 custom CDs of the album. One is just for me personally, and then the other one I made for my girlfriend. I just made them just for funsies, and I actually just got them today, so they're really, really cool, and I'm really happy about them. I know you guys can't see them, but they are super cool. I doubt that you'll be able to buy any, because they're kind of expensive to make, but if that ends up happening, obviously I will inform you all on the podcast. But yeah, that's the news. I'm super exhausted, and also Schoolyard Sacrifice self-titled is out. It came out on May 20th. So if you're into that, please give that a listen. Like I said, it would really mean a lot to me. I put a lot of effort into it. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. Today we're talking about something that is a lot bigger than my shitty music. So, for those of you who don't know, my 3 favorite video games of all time are Punch-Out for the Wii, released in 2009, Amori, and Cuphead. Those are my 3 favorite video games ever made. And we have big news about one of them. The other games are irrelevant. I just kind of wanted to share my favorite games. But very big news today about Cuphead. I'm not really like a news podcast. I don't really cover like specific things. But I just heard about this now, and I'm extremely excited about it, and I thought it would make for a good Pillowcast episode. So, today we're going to be talking about the newly announced Cuphead games. So for those of you who don't know, Cuphead is a 2D boss rush platforming shoot 'em up game released in 2017 by MDHR Studios, and it is just one of the greatest games ever made. It is just one of the best games I have ever played. The aesthetic of the game is like 1920s rubber hose animation, 1920s, 1930s rubber hose animation, and all of the graphics that you see in the game were hand-drawn by the team at MDHR, so everything is hand-drawn. It was a labor of love from everyone involved. It took years to make, and when it came out in 2017, it was extremely popular. It became like one of the best-selling games ever, I think, or something like that. I don't know, that probably isn't even true, but I like to think it is if it isn't. But it is just an incredible game front to back, and you owe it to yourself to play it if you haven't. It's been out for like 10 years at this point, so if you haven't played it, you should, but I'm sure a lot of you have. It's just an incredible game. But aside from the art books, some merchandise, and specifically the Cuphead Netflix show, which was a cartoon based on the game, and the Delicious Last Course DLC, which came out a few years ago for the base game, we haven't gotten a lot of Cuphead content. And a big reason why is because the way that Cuphead is made, it's very, very hard to make content because Cuphead takes a long time. Like I said, the game is entirely made by hand-drawn animation, painted backdrops. Some of the levels even use, like, physical objects in them. Specifically, the level with Grim Matchstick, the dragon, the tower in the background was practically made. They made a model for that one. Jimmy the Great, the pyramid in the background is practical. There is a lot of stuff that goes into making these games, and they take a very, very long time to make. So that's the reason why we don't have a lot of Cuphead content, is because it just takes a long time to make. But I am a firm believer in quality versus quantity. I think it is much more important to make a quality product than to just pump something out every year. And I really appreciate that MDHR does that for Cuphead, because it's a very important game, and you don't want to just pump out garbage. But big announcements with the Cuphead content, and as like I said, there's 2 games recently announced. So I actually didn't hear about this until today, even though the announcement happened like 3 days ago, at the time of recording this. But Studio MDHR posted on YouTube a trailer called Studio MDHR Special Bulletin, New Game Announcements. And they announced 2 brand new Cuphead games. I want to talk about the trailer first before I get into anything, because the trailer is really, really cool. It's kind of like a news broadcast, and there's like this puppet Cuphead guy, that announces it, and there's a lot of funny jokes, and it's a really well done trailer. Even the trailers for Cuphead, they do a good job. Like, everything, they don't skimp out on anything Cuphead related, and that's awesome. But into the actual content, what did they say in the game announcement by MDHR for Cuphead? Well, firstly, the first thing that they said, which really caught me off guard, and something that I was not expecting whatsoever, is that there is a new hand-drawn full adventure Cuphead game in development, similar to the first game, which is crazy to me, because I recall MDHR saying something like, we owe everything to Cuphead. You know, Cuphead we hold it very dear to us, but we want to move on to new things. We want to move on to new ventures. And I don't blame them. Cuphead was a big deal for them, but they don't want themselves to be fully associated with Cuphead, and I get that. They want to do other things. But when I saw this announcement, I was like, are they going back on that? Was that a fake quote? I don't know what's going on. But besides the point, a new Cuphead game is coming out in the style of the first game. Hand-drawn, full adventure, all that stuff. And that's all we really know about it currently. We don't know anything else about it. We don't know about any new mechanics. We don't know about any of the new bosses, if there are new bosses. We don't know anything about it. We just know that a hand-drawn Cuphead game is coming soon, and that it's in development. My guess is it's very early development, because we don't have any info. We don't have any info. We don't even have screenshots. We don't have like a demo or game footage. We don't have anything. So my guess is that it's a very early build currently. Either that, or they're just keeping it secretive and they want it to be a surprise from when the game comes out. And if that's the case, that's awesome. And I'm glad that they're keeping it under wraps if that is the case. But my assumption is that the game just isn't even remotely finished. So that's why we don't have a lot of content. But that's all we have. That's all we have on that. And so, like I said, my personal thoughts on this, I was not expecting it based on the things that MDHR said in the past, but I welcome it with open arms 110%. Based on how great the base game is, based on how great the Delicious Last Course DLC was for the game, I have no doubt in my mind that the game is going to be incredible. It is going to be exactly what we need out of a Cuphead sequel, quote unquote. We don't even know if it's a sequel. It could very well just be like a separate game that's not connected to the first game at all. We have no clue, but a lot of people are referring to it as Cuphead 2, just because it's a hand-drawn game in the vein of the first game. So people are just calling it Cuphead 2. But I have no doubt it's going to be super good. I'm very excited to see new stuff come out about this as the years go on, because it's going to take years for this to come out. Like, it's going to take a long time, but I am definitely willing to wait. But the second thing that they announced, which is the second game, is something that I'm actually extremely excited about. More excited about than the announcement of a quote-unquote Cuphead 2, is the fact that MDHR announced in the same trailer that they are going to be releasing a arcade-style 2D platforming game based on Cuphead called Cuphead's Mighty Adventure. And it is really, really cool. And this one's actually further in development because they actually showed us game footage and like footage of the game in the trailer, which is extremely exciting. And I'm going to talk about that and break that all down. So the game, as they said in the trailer, is based on the inception of video games. So we're talking like the early to mid 80s with arcade cabinets and the NES and Atari and stuff like that. Specifically, it seems to be very heavily based on the original Mario games. If you look at the cover art that was put in the trailer, that's also circulating around online, you've got Cuphead in a really, really cute art style, jumping up in the air, and it's a very similar pose to how Mario was posed on the original Super Mario Kart. Super Mario Brothers cartridge. I'm not talking about the kart racing game. So yeah, it's really cool that they're kind of going back and, kind of showing off a new piece of history with Cuphead, because the whole thing with Cuphead is that they go back and they take inspiration from media from different parts of history. Like a big part of Cuphead was that the game was based on 1930s rubber hose animation, and it was very faithfully done. They used some of the old practices that those companies used back in the day to make those cartoons while they were making the game. So it was very faithfully done, and now they're doing the same thing and taking Cuphead and putting him in the 80s gaming world, which I think is super, super cool. And knowing what they did with that rubber hose animation style in the original Cuphead run, I think that they will do wonders with this concept. I think that they will do absolute wonders with this concept when the game comes out. And just judging by how the game looks in the trailer, it just looks incredible. The graphics just look super, super cool. And I'm going to talk more about that. I'm actually going to pull up some pictures and screenshots from the trailer so that I actually have some more stuff to talk about. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to Mighty Cuphead Adventure and like the actual game is the title card. It's really, really cool. It uses the similar font from the Cuphead logo that was in the game, and you've got Cuphead and Mugman along with Ms. Chalice and Grand Elder Kettle over there, like kind of like a cliff. They're kind of looking. It looks kind of like maybe it's the Devil's Casino in the back from the game. Really, really cool. And I find it really funny that the copyright at the bottom of the screen says 1988 Studio MDHR, which makes me really excited because if you played the original game, they had the copyright dates scattered throughout the main game be from the 1930s. So they're doing a similar thing before the 80s in here, and this is really, really cool, and I really, really enjoy this. Getting to the actual gameplay footage, the first part we get is kind of like a scenery that's more fit with the Root Pack fight, the first boss in Cuphead. There's kind of like it kind of looks like they're in a garden. They're fighting like onions and potatoes and shit. Really, really cool. They all have 3 lives, both Cuphead and Mugman. Kind of like the original game. It looks to be co-op, which is also again akin to the main game. Super, super cool. Looks like you can collect coins and stuff. This next section was really interesting, and I'm actually not entirely sure what fight this is based on. But if I had to take a guess, it kind of reminds me of the Dr. Call fight, the Dr. Call's robot fight from Cuphead, from the third aisle. You've kind of got some buildings in the background, and while it's not entirely a junkyard, it kind of has a similar aesthetic to it. You've got this chain ball guy, which looks kind of cool, and something that's really interesting is there looks to be an enemy in this section that looks kind of like a Bullet Bill from Mario. So if that's the case, that's a cool throwback. I don't know if they're going to get in trouble for that because Nintendo is very picky about copyright. So I don't know if that's going to be the case with this particular game in this enemy. This section of the trailer is also in single player, so there's no co-op on that part. And then we get the first boss fight shown, which is a boss from the main Cuphead game, the Root Pack. Who was the first boss in the game, like I said earlier. It's a slightly different portrayal. Usually with Cuphead, the fights are broken up into different phases, and so specifically for the Root Pack fight, you start off with the potato, Sal Sputter, you defeat him, and then it goes to Ollie Bulb, who's the onion, and then at the end, you fight Chauncey Chantenay, who is the carrot. But in this version of the fight, Chauncey's holding Ollie Bulb and Sal Sputter in both of his hands. So maybe there'll be like a supplementary kind of like extra hazard during the fight, and Chauncey is the main boss fight that you fight during the battle. He also has the rings coming out, which I think are really cool because that was one of the attacks that he used in the game. Super, super cool. And it also looks like there's like actual enemies on the ground while you're fighting him. So it could be a really, really cool twist on the main fight in the game. And that brings me to a theory that I have. I don't think that Mighty Cuphead Adventure is going to have any sort of new bosses. We're not going to have a lot of new characters, big main characters in the game. I think it is going to be kind of Cuphead reimagined for the 80s as opposed to the 30s. And that could be wrong. Maybe they're just showing the root pack because it's a nice little teaser to the rest of the game and doesn't give a lot away. But if I were to take a guess, I would say this is going to be more of a reimagined version of Cuphead that focuses more on the platforming as opposed to the boss fights. And all of the bosses from the base game are going to be coming back in here, and just kind of reimagined in an arcade 80s style, which could be a really, really cool concept. And it's coming from someone who has played the original game countless times over, I think it would be a really, really cool reimagining of the original concepts. And I'm very excited about that because I think Cuphead's a perfect game. I don't think there's a bad boss. I don't think there's a bad mechanic. And the only thing with it is I've just run it dry. It's a very short game once you get good at it. So I think it's going to be really cool to see this content reimagined in a different setting, a different aesthetic. I'm very excited about that, and I think this could be a hint towards that, but I'm not entirely sure. Another thing, I was sending a voice message to my friends before I started this that kind of revolves around the running gun levels in the game. I was talking to them about that, and I'm going to kind of bring it in here. So, one of the most contentious aspects of the original Cuphead game was the running gun stages, which are structured similarly to what we were shown here in Mighty Cuphead Adventures, where it is a 2D scroller where you're just shooting enemies and making your way to the end of the level, similarly to like a Super Mario Brothers. People have very mixed opinions on them. Some people hate them, some people like them and like them more than the bosses. Most people are in the middle. I like them, but they are definitely my least favorite part of the game. The game was definitely more focused around the bosses and the power-ups as opposed to the running gun stages. They kind of feel secondary to the bosses. And they're also not even required to beat the game. They are recommended because you get coins from them to purchase stuff in the shop, and that makes the game a lot easier. But they're not required to beat the game. And they're a very contentious aspect of the game. And I think maybe a big driving factor as to why they're making a Cuphead 2D platformer game is to kind of take that concept of the running guns from Cuphead and reimagine them and kind of make them better. I heard that the running guns were kind of put in because they didn't want the game to be viewed as a boss rush game. And they kind of wanted the game to kind of stand on its own two legs without labels like that. And they put those in to kind of diversify the gameplay. And it works, I think. I definitely do think it works. And I definitely think if Cuphead was seen still today as a boss rush rage kind of game, I don't think it would nearly be as relevant as it still is. So that was a good decision, I think, on their part, and I don't think the running guns get a lot of credit for that. But a lot of people still don't like them. And I think that this is a good opportunity for them to go back and redo that concept and do it better. And I think that's a really, really cool idea, and I think that could have been a driving factor as to why this game is getting made in the first place. Yeah. And then at the end, we have a little cool graphic with a CRT TV with an old style console. It looks like some NES style controllers down there with a cartridge inside. Super, super cool graphic here. And the text says currently in development. It says modern console. So this will be on like your Xboxes, PlayStation, Switch, all of that. Personal computer as well. So it'll be a PC game as well. And 8-bit system. So 8-bit system is interesting to me. This is going to sound extremely unrelated, but as someone who loves playing on the NES and who collects NES games, something that I really like is when companies make their own games and put them on NES carts that are compatible with the old hardware. For example, this is gonna, like I said, this is gonna sound strange, but Spirit Halloween, the Halloween company that makes like animatronics and Halloween decor, they made a Spirit Halloween video game that was compatible with the NES. They made it on an orange NES cartridge, and you could play it on an NES. And so seeing 8-bit system on here, along with modern consoles and personal computer listed in the list of systems it's going to be compatible with, it would be really cool if this means that they are going to be making cartridges of the game that are compatible with the NES and or SNES. That would be fucking incredible. Maybe even like the Sega Genesis if they're even going that far. But the cartridge in this graphic at the end of the trailer looks more akin to a Sega Genesis SNES cartridge as opposed to an NES one. So that would be my bet on what they would do with this cartridge if this is what's going to happen. But this would be so cool. Super, super cool. Like I said, I love when companies do shit like this, so I think it would be incredible to see Cuphead this new Cuphead game on a cartridge like this. Super, super cool. I hope that's what that means. If it doesn't, it's probably going to mean something else that's also super cool. But I just love how committed to the bit Studio MDHR is. Like I said, back with the original game, they were very just accurate with the 1930s depiction. In terms of the base game, like I said, the copyright dates were titled the 30s in the game, and all of that stuff. And like I said, it seems that they have the same energy for the 80s with this Mighty Cuphead Adventure, with the copyright saying 88 on there, and the possibility that it could be made on cartridge. I think that this is super, super cool, the possibility that it could be released on cartridge. It's going to be, like I said, to all the other systems. I think that that's a really cool idea, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do it, because, like I said, they do the source material very, very well when it comes to Cuphead. And that's about it. That's all we really have to go off of with the trailer. And final thoughts, I'm super excited about Mighty Cuphead Adventure. I think it is going to be fantastic. It's going to be a really, really cool look back on the 80s gaming scene, just with Cuphead. And it's going to be super, super cool. I'm very, very excited about it. We don't have a release date. We don't have a release date for Cuphead 2 either, quote unquote. That's going to be years. I'm placing bets on that right now. It's going to be years before Cuphead 2, quote unquote, comes out, the hand-drawn game. But I don't think it's going to be that much longer before we get an official release date for Mighty Cuphead Adventure. I think it could definitely be soon, maybe in the next year or so. But like I said, MDHR likes to take their time with their projects, and their projects do tend to be very time-consuming anyway. But since this is a standard 2D platformer game, based around games made in the 80s, and it's not hand-drawn, I think you can definitely expect it sooner. So that's definitely a big plus. And I'm just super, super excited about it. I'm just such a big Cuphead fan. I love Cuphead. I love the DLC. I have both art books for both the base game and the DLC. Anything Cuphead, I'm eating that up. So, very, very excited about this announcement. Very, very excited about being able to play these games in the future. And I low-key, since I made this, once Mighty Cuphead Adventure comes out, I might just do a review on Pillowcast to talk about it, because this is the whole thing with Pillowcast. It's meant to just be me talking about whatever I want to talk about, and you best believe I'm going to want to talk about Mighty Cuphead Adventure when it comes out. So I'm very excited about that. And, overall, I think prospects are looking good for these games. I think, put your trust in MDHR, put your trust in these games. I think they're going to be super, super good. Just support indie studios, support indie games, make sure that these games do well, if you like Cuphead. And yeah, that's about it. So, those are my thoughts on the new trailer, for the new Cuphead games that just got announced. Very, very excited about it. I'm going to be talking about them again in the future when they come out. So, hell yeah. That's going to be it. That's going to be it for this episode of Pillowcast. Make sure to subscribe to Chocolate Ninja Like. You get updated whenever these episodes come out. You get notifications, you get all that jazz. And yeah, that's going to be it. That's going to wrap up this episode of Cuphead. This episode of Cuphead. This episode of Pillowcast. Again, thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. And once again, stay fluffy, everybody.